Every empire in its prime and peak of glory believed the exact same great lie. It believed that it was somehow different from the rest, that it was stronger, more deeply rooted, and completely unshakable. It assumed that for the first time in history, it had solved the ancient, unsolvable riddle of power and dominion. The Egyptians believed this lie as they raised monumental pyramids along the banks of the Nile. The Persians relied on this illusion while ruling over vast, boundless territories. The Romans, who carved their faith and authority into immortal marble, believed this lie most of all, with every fiber of their being. And unfortunately today, we who live beneath the shadow of modern skyscrapers fall into the very same delusion. We naively assume that our system is immune to collapse. But there is one man, dead and gone for 600 years, who would look at our modern civilization, our financial hubs, and our shimmering cities, and with a subtle, knowing smile, he would say, "I have seen this movie before. I know exactly what lies behind those concrete towers you trust so much, and beneath the paper money you print so freely. And I know precisely what is going to happen to you in the very next step." The genius we are speaking of is Ibn Khaldun, born in 1332 in Tunis, the heart of North Africa. He was not one of those detached theorists sitting in the comfortable, isolated ivory towers of modern universities. His life was spent in the absolute center of history's bloodiest, most ruthless arenas. He managed to survive the Black Death, the bubonic plague, one of the greatest catastrophes humanity has ever seen, not just once, but 3 separate times. He watched with his own eyes as half the population of his world, including his closest friends and family, withered away in pure agony. He personally witnessed great dynasties and mighty states climb to the absolute zenith of power in a single generation, only to dissolve like a soap bubble and turn into a cloud of dust in the very next. He did not merely mourn the fallen kings and ruined empires. With the cold detachment of a true scientist, he sat down and took notes. From these raw observations, one of the greatest masterpieces of human history was born, the Muqaddimah. In this monumental work, Ibn Khaldun pursued the most dangerous, most jarring question humanity has ever been afraid to ask. Why do civilizations die? What is the hidden mechanism that keeps a state alive, and what is the invisible machinery that drags it toward an inevitable end? His answer to this dangerous question was not just military failure or simple bad luck. He had discovered a hidden force lying much deeper, something that shapes the very soul of human societies. He called this force Asabiyyah. Asabiyyah is the fundamental social bond that ties a society together, the spirit of solidarity, mutual trust, and the collective will to act as one. The rise or fall of any state depends entirely on the strength of this bond, and this bond moves through an inescapable 5-stage historical cycle. Stage 1 is the emergence of the desert people, the nomads, onto the stage of history. These people are completely removed from comfort. They are raw, they are hungry, but most importantly, they are bound together unto death to survive the brutal conditions of the wilderness. Their Asabiyyah, their spirit of social solidarity, burns at maximum intensity like an unquenchable ember. No army, no fortress walls can stand against them. Driven by their fierce faith and absolute unity, they tear down and crush everything in their path. They are an unstoppable force of nature. Stage 2 is the stage of victory. These fierce and powerful outsiders conquer the soft, comfort-loving, luxury-addicted inhabitants of the cities and claim the throne for themselves. However, power inevitably breeds change. As the new rulers consolidate their authority, they begin to distance themselves from the tribe that created them, their old companions in arms. They build massive palaces, erect thick fortress walls around themselves, and completely isolate their regime from the common people. Power has now become absolute, but the invisible bond that holds society together has just received its first fatal wound. Stage 3 is the era dominated by comfort and luxury. In this stage, luxury infiltrates the palace like a slow, seductive poison. The original, hardened warrior generation that founded the state is now dead. A new generation inherits the throne, a generation that has never known scarcity, paid no price to earn that immense power, and simply stumbled into an unearned inheritance. For this generation, the state is no longer an institution to sacrifice for, but merely a treasury to exploit for pleasure. The arts rise, architecture flourishes, palace banquets become endless, but the soul of the society is rotting from within. Stage 4 is the period when the alarms of doom begin to wail. The rulers and the palace bureaucracy constantly need more money to sustain their decadent lifestyles, their massive palace expenses, and the mercenary armies they are forced to pay to maintain control. As the treasury runs dry, only one desperate remedy remains: raising taxes. The tax burden on the producers, the farmers, and the merchants reaches unbearable dimensions. The people pay the ultimate price, and production becomes entirely meaningless. As individuals lose all hope in the system, their loyalty and trust toward the state evaporate into air. When trust is gone, Asabiyyah is dead. The fifth and final stage is the inevitable, catastrophic collapse. The state completely extracts and gasps the very lifeblood of its productive population until the well runs bone dry. Society becomes utterly atomized, reduced to selfish individuals who care only for themselves. No one trusts their neighbor. No one is willing to bleed or fight for a collective purpose. And exactly at this moment, the familiar scene reemerges from behind the curtain. On the far horizon, a new hungry tribe appears, bound by a powerful solidarity, burning with ambition, existing in the first stage of the cycle. The decayed state falls at a single blow, and the wheel of history ruthlessly resets once again. Now, let us be entirely honest with ourselves and conduct an uncomfortably modern analysis. Does this exact trajectory documented centuries ago by Ibn Khaldun while looking at mud brick palaces and cavalry armies play out the same way in our digital world today? Absolutely, yes. Look at history. When the ancient Roman Empire reached stage 4, the crisis of insatiable, out-of-control spending, what did it do? To fund palace luxuries and pay the wages of its legions, they gathered the silver coins circulating in the market, clipped their edges, and mixed them with cheap copper to debase the currency. They created inflation. As the pure silver inside the coin diminished, the actual power of Rome withered away with it. Now take this ancient financial manipulation and connect it directly to the year 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve in the United States. The system was supposedly designed to permanently prevent financial panics, halts, and economic collapses, and to guarantee absolute stability. But what actually happened? In the year it was founded, 1913, the highest federal income tax rate in America was a mere 7%. The government barely touched a tiny fraction of what the people earned. And what about today? Today, that rate exceeds 37%. We see higher taxes, permanently indebted governments, a shrinking middle class whose purchasing power erodes day by day, and most importantly, a decaying trust in public institutions. Modern central banks are doing something far more dangerous than Rome's clipping of coins. With a single keystroke on a computer screen, they conjure billions of dollars out of thin air, backed by absolutely nothing. Consider the year 1971 with deep attention. President Nixon completely severed the dollar's last tie to gold, ending the gold standard forever. From that exact moment onward, the money in your pocket or bank account ceased to be an asset carrying an intrinsic, tangible value like gold. It turned into pure, unadulterated faith, a collective faith that the currency means something, a faith that governments will somehow pay their debts, a blind, unconditional faith that central bank technocrats are competent and honest. But what happens when that faith, that core social trust, finally melts away? You don't have to look back into deep history. Just look at the year 2020. Under the guise of a global crisis, the Federal Reserve printed a staggering $3 trillion out of thin air in a matter of months and injected it into the global system. The exorbitant prices you see in supermarkets today, the insane hikes in housing and rent, are not just simple supply chain glitches. Inflation is a hidden, quiet act of theft. In the words of Ibn Khaldun, inflation is the heaviest tax of all, stolen directly from the people's pockets without any legislation and without their consent. As the state prints money to fund its own unbridled expenditures, it systematically destroys the value of your hard labor. While one half of the world is drowning and flailing in a swamp of debt within this financial illusion, things have already begun to shift on the other side of the coin. The BRICS nations, namely China, Russia, India, and others, who seem to know Ibn Khaldun's cycle by heart, are accumulating physical gold at a frantic, record-breaking pace. The Western strategy of weaponizing the dollar geographically and politically is now backfiring heavily. On the global horizon, a new hungry tribe is forming, characterized by high solidarity and a drive to challenge the existing financial hegemony. Locally, within our borders, trust in institutions, governments, and corporate media is hovering at historic lows. The financial framework is shaking, and social contracts are fracturing. This, by every historical metric imaginable, is the textbook definition of Stage 4, which every great empire experienced right before its downfall. But this is precisely the hopeless point where Ibn Khaldun surprises us. He was not a dark prophet of doom, merely watching the world burn from afar. He firmly believed that this cycle was not an inescapable cosmic curse. If a society recognizes its errors and returns to its core principles, this fatal circle can indeed be broken. However, there was only one prescription available to achieve this: rebuilding Asabiyyah, restoring social trust, absolute justice, and collective solidarity. It required investing in human capital and morality rather than printing fiat money and chasing short-term luxury. Unfortunately, no empire in history ever paid heed to this wise prescription while sitting at the absolute peak of its power. Ibn Khaldun lived to see the violent collapse and total erasure of 4 different sultanates and states with his own eyes. And at the end of all this raw experience, as a 72-year-old wise sage, he stepped into a military tent to sit across the negotiating table from Tamerlane, the most feared, ruthless conqueror the world had ever seen. In the middle of a ruined, burning city, he spent hours discussing philosophy, justice, and the soul of human societies with the great conqueror. Even a world-conquering tyrant like Tamerlane bowed with deep respect before his immense wisdom. The ultimate question we must ask ourselves today is not whether Ibn Khaldun's universal cycle applies to our modern world. History has already proven him right, time and time again. The real question, the one that should keep us awake at night, is this: which stage of this fatal 5-stage cycle are we currently living in? Are we enjoying the final days of unearned luxury in our comfortable palaces, or are we standing right on the edge of the abyss, where the loyalty of a heavily taxed population has completely run out? History may not repeat itself word for word, but its events, systems, and collapses always echo in the exact same tone. And right now, that ancient echo is bouncing off the walls of our modern world, returning to us with a louder, more jarring sound. You can plug your ears, you can close your eyes, but the cycle will not stop turning. So I ask you one final time, do you hear that rising echo? Are you truly listening?